The real bombshell landed when whispers of Garrett's discontent went public. For an athlete widely regarded as a generational talent, the news rattled both local and national sports circles. Initially, no one could believe that Cleveland's best defender would consider suiting up elsewhere. After all, he signed a substantial contract extension not too long ago, signaling his commitment to building success right there in Ohio. But fan optimism can sometimes mask underlying frustrations. According to multiple insider reports, Garrett's frustration began simmering as the Browns failed to make consistent playoff runs. He was said to be tired of half measures, coaching changes, and an offense that didn't always hold its end of the bargain. Despite clear improvements in certain phases of the team, the overall lack of direction eventually wore him down. And as the 2024 season wrapped up, the tension apparently reached a boiling point. It started as small rumors on social media. A cryptic post by Garrett here, a subtle unfollowing of Browns accounts there. Then, local beat reporters picked up hints from people inside the organization. Before long, the buzz grew louder and louder. Was Garrett really done with the Browns, or was he simply voicing his exasperation? Opinions varied, but the loudest speculation pointed to one conclusion: he wanted a trade. Many fans shrugged it off at first, believing it was just a momentary vent or rumor. That denial couldn't last once more credible sources chimed in. NFL insiders described a dramatic scenario behind closed doors. Allegedly, Garrett had directly told some coaching staff that he wasn't convinced Cleveland would be a true contender anytime soon. Worse yet, he didn't want to spend the prime of his career weighed down by a team still searching for consistency. At that point, the story wasn't just a whisper. It was a roar. Some speculated that Garrett might have demanded an immediate trade, while others insisted he was merely hinting that he wouldn't sign yet another extension down the road. Either way, the possibility of losing him struck terror into the heart of the Browns organization. So why does this trade request feel so shocking? It's simple. Myles Garrett is more than just another defensive end. He's a franchise cornerstone. A player like that doesn't typically force his way out unless there's a deep-rooted problem. If he's truly determined, any front office would have a difficult time holding him against his will. For the Browns, it's a public relations nightmare. How can they assure fans that they're building a Super Bowl-ready squad if their top star wants no part of it? Yet the story wouldn't end with Garrett's dissatisfaction. Some people close to him stepped forward, urging him to reconsider. One such figure was Greg Nome, a fellow Cleveland teammate who publicly appealed to Garrett through interviews and social media. The big question was whether that appeal carried any real weight. A trade request is one thing, but reversing that request requires strong motivations. While many wondered if Nome's words could calm the storm, there was widespread doubt among analysts. After all, the bond between teammates can be tight. But is it tight enough to make someone abandon their dream of playing on a more formidable roster? Keep that question in mind, because the next phase of this unfolding drama involves some direct appeals that could shift the entire narrative. Even so, one thing is clear. This potential departure isn't merely a rumor gone wild. There's substance to it, and the fallout could reshape both the Browns' future and the NFL at large. If you're enjoying this video, give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more awesome content. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Shortly after the news of Garrett's possible trade request broke, reporter Mary Kay from Cleveland's local beat secured an interview with Greg Nome. Nome, a younger figure on the roster, expressed genuine worry about losing a mentor and a friend he views as an older brother. He talked at length about sitting down with Garrett to understand his perspective and persuade him to remain a pillar of the team. On the surface, that sounds like an admirable effort. What better way to quell the drama than by appealing to camaraderie? But it's worth asking how much influence Nome truly has in this scenario. Many fans on social media argued that Garrett's frustration seemed too deep-rooted to be fixed by a casual conversation. After all, if Garrett's main complaint is about the Browns' questionable trajectory, a single teammate's personal plea might fall on deaf ears. Then there's the hard reality of NFL business. Players can care about each other but still end up on different teams if front offices decide that's what's best, or if a star demands a move with enough force. Nome, for his part, was quoted as saying he would do everything possible to talk Garrett down from the metaphorical ledge. He insisted that Cleveland is closer to contention than outsiders realize, adding that a couple of strategic offseason moves could turn the entire locker room's mindset around. He painted an optimistic picture. If the right players come in, if the coaching staff commits to a winning culture, maybe Garrett's concerns could be put to rest. Critics, however, pointed out that Nome himself isn't entirely safe from trade rumors. Fresh off a season that didn't quite match expectations, Nome is also under the microscope. The Browns front office, eager to patch holes and free up cap space, might even consider moving him. So could Nome's public stance in favor of Garrett staying be a way of signaling loyalty to the Browns franchise? Or is it a sincere attempt to keep a friend and mentor in town? One might wonder if he's lobbying for stability he hopes will extend to his own situation. The personal angle here adds another layer to an already thick plot. Nome emphasizes that Garrett's departure would rip a hole in the defense. He's not wrong. Losing one of the league's best pass rushers could devastate Cleveland's ability to pressure opposing quarterbacks. But if Garrett is indeed set on leaving, that knowledge could create a sense of doom in the locker room. Players sometimes rally around a star's frustrations, especially if they see those issues too. If that star does end up walking out the door, the team is left grappling with the idea that their window for success might slam shut prematurely. And so, Nome's pitch may or may not have the impact he's hoping for. The entire question circles back to whether Garrett's mind is even open to persuasion. A kind-hearted plea from a teammate can only do so much if the fundamental concerns, like a questionable offense, shaky coaching outlook, and uncertain playoff prospects, remain unsolved. In the coming weeks, it might become clear whether Nome's words have changed anything. But right now, the entire NFL is bracing for what could be the biggest offensive trade in years. Still, Nome's efforts alone aren't enough to quell the fervor. It's not just about emotional appeals. There's a very real financial and strategic dimension at play. And that's what makes this saga so incredibly complex. The next step is understanding how Cleveland's front office might respond, and whether their public stance, "we're not trading him," is genuinely rock solid, or merely strategic lip service. From the outside looking in, the Browns appear unwavering. "We're not moving him," they claim. That's the official line, repeated by both the front office and certain media outlets. Yet behind closed doors, the reality might be more fluid. Insiders have hinted that Cleveland's decision-makers have received calls from multiple teams, some in the NFC, others in the AFC, inquiring about Garrett's availability. According to these reports, the Browns' response has been cryptic. "We're not interested, but stay tuned." That phrase, "stay tuned," is intriguing. One interpretation is that they're serious about keeping Garrett, but they're leaving just enough of a window open in case the right offer rolls in. Another is that they're simply playing the trade market, waiting for teams to up their bids before revealing their true intentions. It's no secret that general managers use the media to drive up a player's trade value. A sly leak here, a rumor planted there, and suddenly the frenzy can escalate. The next thing you know, a star once thought unavailable is at the center of a bidding war. Financial details also complicate matters. Trading Garrett prior to June 1st would incur a substantial dead money hit on the Browns' cap. After June 1st, that financial blow could be spread over 2 seasons, making the trade more palatable. On the flip side, Cleveland might prefer to acquire draft picks as early as 2025. If they do wait until after the draft to finalize a deal, they miss out on using those picks this year. That's a difficult trade-off, especially for a front office that has faced pressure from ownership to deliver immediate results. Moreover, Andrew Berry's job security is another angle. If Berry truly believes he's safe for at least a couple more seasons, he might consider a more delayed approach to maximize return, even if it means missing out on the upcoming draft. But if he's on thin ice, he may push for a deal that yields assets right away, helping him prove that he can turn the team around quickly. History has shown that general managers sometimes make moves that aren't best for the franchise's long-term interests, but might give them the short-term gains they need to keep their jobs. The public denial, private conversation approach is something many teams adopt. They can't afford to look eager to trade such a star because that might reduce leverage. Instead, they publicly profess loyalty to Garrett. Then, if a rival GM picks up the phone and says, "Let's talk numbers," the Browns can claim they're being reluctantly persuaded. Some fans see this as underhanded, but it's simply how high-stakes negotiations function in professional sports. One day, you're hearing firm statements like, "We aren't trading him for anything." And the next, you're reading headlines that the same player was shipped off for multiple first-round picks and more. Even if the Browns want to keep Garrett at all costs, they face another looming danger: a holdout or a refusal to report. If Garrett is genuinely set on leaving, he might threaten to skip training camp, rack up fines, and create a media storm that forces Cleveland's hand. Players with strong track records and healthy bank accounts can sometimes afford to take that gamble. The last thing Cleveland needs is a dragged-out off-season standoff that pulls focus away from building a more competitive roster. It's not good for morale, and it can derail any positive momentum they hope to create in free agency or team activities. So, the front office is walking a tightrope. They must manage public perception, keep morale in the locker room, and simultaneously weigh the pros and cons of unloading a superstar. Fans want clarity, but in the cutthroat environment of the NFL, clarity often means lost leverage. As a result, we see these carefully parsed statements. "He's not going anywhere, but we'll take your calls." The question remains, will the right offer appear that turns Cleveland's token disinterest into genuine trade acceptance? Considering the interest from various teams, it's far from impossible. But even that's not the whole picture, because the trade rumor domino effect could ripple across the league, especially if big-name quarterbacks are also on the move. What if the Browns believe they can lure a top-tier quarterback to Cleveland, drastically improving the roster's chance at contention overnight? Would that be enough to keep Garrett from leaving? And if it isn't, how does that new quarterback arrival affect potential trade packages? The layers are endless, and they all feed into a single question. What exactly is the tipping point for the Browns to say, "Yes, we'll do it"? If there's one thing that can sway a disgruntled defensive superstar, it's the promise of a true championship run, often spearheaded by an elite quarterback. Recent rumors suggest the Browns may explore options involving veterans like Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, or even Kirk Cousins. Sure, these might be long shots, but in the NFL, never say never. Sometimes all it takes is the right conversation and the right contract structure to make a surprising move happen. The reason this quarterback angle matters is straightforward. If Garrett's main gripe is that Cleveland isn't a contender, then adding a proven, high-caliber QB could radically alter his outlook. After all, no matter how good an edge rusher is, it usually takes a reliable leader under center to compete for a Super Bowl. If the Browns can orchestrate such a seismic roster shift, they might not only reassure Garrett, but also attract other top talent. Nothing revitalizes a fan base and a locker room like snagging a marquee quarterback. Yet, there's a massive if here. Can the Browns realistically trade for or sign such a QB without sacrificing too much of their future? Acquiring star quarterbacks often demands draft picks and cap space, two resources they may also need if they're holding out to see how the Garrett situation unfolds. Another irony is that if they decide to move Garrett, they could leverage the windfall of picks from that deal to chase a bigger quarterback name. But at that point, you're essentially trading the core of your defense for the hope of offensive salvation. Meanwhile, other teams are certainly circling. Some franchises have a proven track record of success and might be just one pass rusher away from a championship push. Imagine Garrett suiting up for a perennial playoff team in the NFC or for a rival AFC squad looking to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs. For those squads, giving up multiple first-rounders, plus additional assets, might be worth it for a defensive anchor who can single-handedly disrupt an opponent's offensive flow. If Cleveland truly does listen to offers, it could become a heated bidding war, one that sets a new market standard for defensive superstars. The ripple effect extends beyond Cleveland and Garrett. Think about all the roster shifts that happen when a big-name player moves. Teams that miss out on Garrett might pivot to other top-tier pass rushers, driving up competition in free agency or the draft. A massive trade could push another disgruntled star elsewhere to rethink their future. In essence, whenever a superstar is rumored to be on the move, it can trigger a domino chain across the entire league. Agents, front offices, and players all respond to these changes in real time, looking to maximize their own leverage. From the Browns' perspective, it's crucial to note that they don't want to blow up their entire defense. Despite the overshadowing drama, Cleveland has some solid pieces. They've invested in the defensive line and secondary, trying to build a well-rounded unit that could make life miserable for opposing QBs. Losing Garrett would definitely set that progress back. But if Garrett's mind is made up, or if his trade value hits a point that's simply too good to pass up, the franchise could rationalize that it's better to strike a deal than force a standoff that benefits no one. GM Andrew Berry might also weigh how other looming moves, like drafting a promising college linebacker or cornerback, could shape the defense's future. A star rookie can excite a fan base, and if the Browns manage to flip Garrett for a haul of picks, they can restock quickly. But that's only if they believe in this year's draft class or perhaps the next. Some analysts argue the 2025 or 2026 drafts might be stronger at certain positions, and so the timing of a Garrett trade might be just as important as the return itself. All this uncertainty builds tension in Cleveland. Is the front office truly confident in the quarterbacks they are rumored to chase? Are they prepared to lose a generational defensive talent in hopes that a borderline elite quarterback or several unknown rookies could deliver wins? There's an understandable fear of repeating the Browns' cyclical problems, drafting well-known names, promising improvement, but never quite reaching the promised land. It's a high-stakes game of chess, and Garrett's request puts the Browns in a check position. The next move could define their fortunes for years. With such complicated factors, cap space, draft picks, locker room culture, superstar demands, the picture is anything but clear. And that leaves fans wondering, will the team decide to push all their chips in, keep Garrett, and risk losing him for far less in the future if he walks away or forces a trade later? Or will they cut ties now, gather a bounty of picks, and attempt a swift rebuild or retool around a new star? The final outcome of this drama might hinge on a small handful of crucial decisions made in the coming months. As we stand at the crossroads, every outcome seems possible. Myles Garrett could sit down with the Browns' leadership, reach a compromise, and remain the anchor of their defense, assuming the front office convinces him they're serious about winning now. Alternatively, the Browns might field a jaw-dropping offer that's simply too tempting to refuse, sending Garrett to a new city with lofty Super Bowl aspirations. Or we might watch the entire situation devolve into a tense standoff, with Garrett refusing to show up for team activities, and the Browns scrambling to save face in the media. Such standoffs have happened before in the NFL. Sometimes the player gets what he wants. Other times the team holds firm and the player eventually relents. The difference here is that Garrett is in his prime, with enough proven success to stand his ground. He may believe he has far more to lose by sticking around a middling squad than by forcing a trade to a contender. That belief alone is enough to keep the rumor mill churning. For fans in Cleveland, the possibility of losing their defensive juggernaut is nothing short of heartbreaking. For neutral observers, it's an intriguing example of the power dynamics between star athletes and the franchises they represent. One possibility that remains faint but not impossible is that Garrett's rumored trade request is being overblown, perhaps by external forces or his own dissatisfaction voiced in a moment of frustration. If the Browns manage a few strategic free agent signings and a strong draft that signals a serious push for the playoffs, maybe Garrett's stance softens. It wouldn't be the first time a star player considered leaving but reversed course after seeing tangible improvements. Even so, the intensity of these trade talks suggests there's more than mild annoyance at play. No matter how it ends, the Myles Garrett saga reveals deeper truths about the Browns organization. It forces us to question whether Cleveland is genuinely a few roster tweaks away from glory, or if there's a larger cultural or strategic shortcoming. If a star of Garrett's caliber doesn't believe in the blueprint, that skepticism might be widespread. Sometimes one blockbuster exit, or near exit, can expose cracks in a team's foundation that management has tried to paper over. For everyone watching from the outside, the drama also underscores the sheer unpredictability of the NFL. One day, a franchise cornerstone seems untouchable. The next, we're talking about potential landing spots. Fans pin their hopes on a successful resolution, while rival supporters dream of adding Garrett's name to their roster. Meanwhile, analysts debate whether the rumored trade packages have any genuine basis in reality. And through it all, the Browns' public stance remains contradictory. Adamant denial mixed with the subtle, "stay tuned." In the end, whether Garrett stays or goes, there's a lesson here about expectations and ambition in professional sports. Even the most gifted talents aren't immune to frustration if the path to success feels murky. The NFL is driven by the pursuit of championships, and time is precious, especially for players with the physical gifts to transform a defense. Garrett might see himself as running out of that precious time in Cleveland. The Browns, on the other hand, might feel he owes them a chance to prove they can build a winner around him. Reconciling these viewpoints is never easy. So as fans across the nation sit and wait, the question remains: is this a fleeting rumor that blows over once cooler heads prevail? Or is it the beginning of an NFL power shift that will send shockwaves through the league? If there's one truth in football, it's that we often don't find out until the final moment, when a trade is announced or an extension is signed. Until that day, the tension will only keep building. Ask yourself, if you were in Myles Garrett's cleats, torn between loyalty to a city that loves you and the aspiration to hoist the Lombardi Trophy, what would you do? And if you were the Browns, would you hold firm to protect your franchise image or quietly weigh the pros and cons of letting him go? As the offseason continues, eyes will stay locked on Cleveland. The behind-the-scenes negotiations, the unexpected twists, and the looming draft will all serve as catalysts for what might be the most pivotal decision in franchise history. Make no mistake, however this ends, it will redefine the Browns, the AFC North, and possibly the entire league. Because when an elite pass rusher rattles his cage, every team in the NFL pays attention, and every fan wonders which uniform he'll be wearing when the dust settles.